Good morning, everyone. It's Bronie here again for another day in Bronie's world. And at Bronie's desk today, I have an Aussie favourite, especially with our team down under in Melbourne. This young man has lots of different titles, but his greatest one that he likes to share is the fact that he is an osteopath. And I thought that was a very interesting path to go down, particularly as the number of people that suffer with some osteo issues, I don't care what age they are, it seems to be a big thing. So I know that this young man's time is very limited. He is fitting us in between appointments. So I'm not going to continue on. I'm going to hand it over to the amazing, wonderful, and handsome Craig White. The floor is all yours now.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I've just got a presentation I'll play. I'll see if I can share screen here again. All right. Can you see that screen okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so we're going to cover a little bit on migraines and headaches and how that relates to things like nutrition and diet and inflammation, those sort of things, and then what you can do about it. So the first thing to know is what's pain. And most people get pain in different ways, and it's quite variable. But the main thing to know is that pain is a warning light. It's a threat of injury or a report that your body is actually suffering an injury. So it doesn't have to be severe. You can get a lot of pain from a small injury, or you can get mild pain from a severe injury. And that variability is where often the problem comes in. So it's also important to know that pain is always real. A lot of people tell me, is it all in my head? Well, yes, but how you perceive pain is how you perceive it. And it's important to recognize that if you are experiencing pain, it is real, and it's important to acknowledge that it's not just you being sensitive, or have I got a low pain tolerance? It does change based on circumstances. And so one of the things we look for is what causes pain. And there's a professor in South Australia called Lorimer Moseley, and he's done a lot of work on pain, what causes pain, and he's come to the conclusion that pain is more of an output than an input, and it's really how we perceive it. And so just as a quick example, this is a pain pathway. So if you get a finger prick, that pain signal will go to your spinal cord, and there's an initial response which might be that you pull back. That's at spinal cord level, but that signal then gets sent up to the brain, and you end up with a response, and your body decides whether it's important or not. And so if you're being chased, you're in a war, you're in a battle, you might get a pretty nasty injury, but you won't feel that pain very much, because you've got a much more important issue to worry about, and that might be bullets flying over your head, or a lion chasing you, or something like that. You've got to get out of immediate danger first. But if you're sitting at your desk and you cut your finger on the paper, that might really hurt. And so the level of pain, the level of injury can be quite variable, and it really depends on a whole range of factors. And those factors include what sort of input you're receiving, previous experience, whether you've had that injury or pain before, whether you've had a history of mental illness, or whether you've got any systemic inflammation, any sensitivity, but things like lack of sleep, how fearful you might be, whether you've got any nutrient deficiencies, any local or systemic inflammation, or just generally being tired or stressed, they will make your pain a lot worse. And that affects all parts of the body, not just headaches and migraines, but they're a very common set of factors that influence people with migraines and headaches. So the common thing that I see with patients, as an osteopath, I do a lot of manual therapy. So trigger points, tight bands of muscle, spinal dysfunction are all major causes of headaches. And I'll give you some examples in a minute. But stress increases things like cortisol, it increases your sympathetic nervous system, and they can make pain quite a lot worse, and your ability to cope with pain a lot worse. As we said, local and systemic inflammation, but also fatigue and nutrient deficiency, all can contribute to migraines. And the musculoskeletal side, posture, so sitting at desk for long periods, overuse, just doing too much of anything can fatigue your muscles or your tissues, and your body in general. That's mental as well as physical. If you had a previous injury, say a whiplash or a concussion or a fall, that will cause neck trauma. And any kind of referred pain can come from either muscles, but it can also come from internal organs, say a brain tumor, or an organ can refer to your back, for example. So these are common examples of trigger points, so tight bands of muscle, and they're usually quite predictable. So if someone comes in and said, I've got pain around my eye or the side of my head, I might think that these muscles in the back of the head, called the suboccipitals, they can cause problem. Another common one is a muscle called splenius capitis, and that refers to the top of the head. So we can predict where the pain might be coming from if it's musculoskeletal based on where the patient reports pain. And each of these red dots represents one person who has had that area marked with an X stimulated in the past. These are trigger point pain patterns by Dr. Janet Travell and Dave Simons. They're quite old now. They've been around for probably since the 50s, and they pioneered the work around trigger points. The most common one that I see in people, and almost everyone has this, is tight traps, the top of the shoulders here. And these are common referral patterns as well for the traps. One thing you'll probably notice if I go back to the first one is that these overlap. So you can have multiple trigger points overlapping, causing pain in the same area. You can have multiple tissues all contributing, and one tissue on its own may not be enough to cause pain. But if you have 3 or 4 tissues that are all a little bit annoyed, that can now trigger off pain. And on top of that, you might be tired, you might be stressed, you might have a mental illness, nutrient deficiency. All those things on their own may not be enough, but when you put them all together, now you've got a problem. So the goal is to try and settle some of those things down and influence what we can influence. I can't help people too much with their mental illness, or they might be seeing their psychologist for that, but I can help the musculoskeletal side, but I also talk about things like sleep, doing more exercise, improving the nutrition. So from a nutritional side of things, deficiencies can lead to pain or poor healing. And the tissue that we're talking about are just your cells in general, but muscles, nerves, your blood vessels, your metabolic function is your metabolism, how fast you move. So sitting still all day contributes to a slow metabolic rate. It's how fast you rev your engine. So you need to keep moving, but it also contributes to things like your immunity and systemic inflammation. So there's a whole range of factors that contribute to poor healing, as well as the pain, and things like inflammation are a major one that we tend to deal with a lot. And the key nutrients we're talking about are amino acids. So these are the building blocks for health. So proteins or amino acids, so they affect muscle, blood, and immune cells. Fatty acids, your omega-3s, so your fish oils, omega-3, 6, and 9. 3 is the key one we tend to like to increase, because that's a major one with regard to inflammation and reducing inflammation. And mineral deficiency is probably the key. Vitamins as well, but mineral deficiency is the one that I think has the biggest impact on my patients. And the common ones are magnesium, zinc, calcium, sodium, potassium, just salt really. But typically there's not just one mineral. So I never prescribe one mineral. I always prescribe a broad spectrum of minerals, because it's never just the one thing. You can't get one nutrient deficiency and cover that off and think that's going to fix the problem. You've got to get the whole package. And so just as an example, magnesium's a really common one. And these are just some of the processes in your body that magnesium is involved with. So protein synthesis is just making of proteins, and that's basically what our body does. Our DNA is all about making proteins. Muscle function, so contraction and relaxation of muscles. Nerve signals are also involved with magnesium. Blood glucose, so anyone with type 2 diabetes or metabolic syndrome, magnesium's a key component of that. Blood pressure, energy, inflammation, fat, but also sleep. So there's a whole range, and there's over 300 reactions just with enzymes in magnesium on their own. So magnesium, that's one mineral. It shows how important that one is, but you've got all the others as well. So there's only 59 more to go. So what do I do as an osteopath? So manual therapy is probably the main thing I do. I'll identify all the key factors that are contributing, which includes things like sleep and exercise, inflammation. But from a manual point of view, I'll look at the muscles that are causing the pain. Often we reproduce the familiar pain of that patient. Might push on a muscle and they'll say, yep, that's my pain. Or I'll push someone else and say, nah, that's just sore where you're pushing. It's not causing my headache. And so then I target those tissues. So we might stretch them, rub them. I do joint manipulation. One of my main techniques is dry needling. And the reason dry needling works so well is it deactivates that tight band or inflamed trigger point, helps calm down the tissue, but it also helps calm the nerve, improves blood flow, can help with range of motion. And those changes happen immediately. So I can diagnose someone with a test, then I can treat them and then retest them immediately and see there's been some change. And quite often my patients leave after dry needling with, within 20 minutes to 4 or 5 hours, their pain has relieved by half. So dry needling is quick and effective in most cases, provided they let me near them with a needle. Not everyone enjoys the thought or the sensation of a needle, and that's okay. We'll find something else to do. And sleep is important. If you're not sleeping or you're not sleeping well, you can't be healthy. And that goes with gut health and nutrition. There's no one thing, but I try and pull all of those levers as best I can and help my patients, because typically they come back with the same problem in 3 or 4 months' time otherwise. So as much as I can help their overall health, I'm doing myself out of a job, but that's what I'm here for. I'm not here to try and see people every week for 6 months to try and fix a problem that I can hopefully help them with long term with a few exercise and diet changes. So in terms of sleep, this goes for a few other things as well. Carbohydrates cause a lot of inflammation. So I use Doc Wallach and Peter Glidden have got the good food, bad food list, and I use that a lot with my patients. And carbohydrates of all types that are processed are usually the problem. So wheat, barley, rye, oats, processed grains, they're processed wheat and barley. They're all really important to try and reduce, if not cut out. And in terms of sleep, that will keep you awake. And if it doesn't keep you awake, it'll wake you up in the middle of the night because your blood sugar regulation is all over the place. So winding down is another important part. People tend to go to bed, they're still thinking about what they did during the day. They're on their phones. The light from the phone, especially the blue light, tends to affect your circadian rhythm quite a lot and gives your body the false impression that it's still daytime. Your body needs to think that it's night, and there's a wind down phase, and light's a key factor. And in terms of light during the day, you need good amounts of sunlight to help with cellular melatonin, which is an important antioxidant in your tissues. But then you've got melatonin that's also used to wind down at night. So those different light patterns during the day are really important. Stimulants, obviously, don't have a coffee before bed, and having the right amount of minerals in your system will help facilitate good sleep. In terms of inflammation, avoid the bad foods, the good food, bad food list I tend to focus in on. Exercise, wear yourself out, but exercise also causes inflammation, so there's a bit of a balance there. You don't want to exercise so much that your body can't recover, but a good amount of exercise is good for sleep because it tires you out, but it also gets your body moving, improves blood flow, and sleep is crucial for healing. So there's a process called autophagy, which happens at night, and that's where most of your healing happens. So you really need to try and make sure you're getting good sleep, and a lot of people really struggle with this. And that comes back to gut health as well as inflammation. So sleep is disrupted by a whole range of factors, including stress and cortisol, and that increases your sympathetic nervous system, which is your flight or fight response. And while that's up, it's hard to sleep, and your digestive tract is really not able to work properly either. So all those factors influence each other. So just doing one in isolation is not going to really work. You've got to try and cover all those factors. And from a nutrient point of view, omega-3s, magnesium, probiotics. So a good probiotic is Nightly Essence. I've recently come across a good presentation from Dr. William Davis, who's a cardiologist in America. He did an interview with Dr. Eric Berg, talking about how one particular strain of microbes called Lactobacillus reuteri can help a whole range of health issues, but one of them is sleep. And he started culturing his own. So he'll get a tablet and make up his own yogurt and culture it over a 36-hour window and increase the number of what they call colony forming units, or the number of bugs, from around about 200 million to something like 300 billion. So not only do you avoid taking 10, 15 tablets a day, you get a really high dose, and it's quite a sustainable, easy way to incorporate it into your food. And that on its own can help reduce inflammation, increases oxytocin, can help with sleep and insomnia, increases muscle mass, testosterone, a whole range of hormones. And just on its own, that one microbe can make a big difference. So you can get a probiotic tablet and culture your own that way. So that's something to look at. That's that interview with Eric Berg and William Davis is well worth watching if you get a minute. It's only about 20 minutes, and he actually shows you how to make the yogurt. It's a lot easier than it sounds. Antioxidants and gut health again. So we go through a gut repair, and the one I tend to follow is a version of Joanne Conaway's program, which is quite good. I use I-26 and nightly essence as a starting point, and then depending on what the patient's up for, I give them base nutrients as well as enzymes, and if they're up for it, I'll give them the extra digestive aids and the collagen peptides as well. But that tends to be a lot for people in the first process. So I start with I-26 and nightly essence and build up from there. So we've covered most of that. The baseline supplements I recommend are any of the mineral products. So the basic plant-derived minerals, herbal rainforest in particular, if someone's got a gut problem, and OsteoFX is really good for extra magnesium and calcium and muscle pain and sleep and those sorts of things. The BTT or the Beyond Tangy Tangerine, I routinely give people as a starting point, and obviously the EFAs. I try and get them to have as many as they can in their diet, but quite often you need to supplement with extra. So particularly with the minerals and the BTT, they're the things I always begin with. And then if I need to add more, I'll add more. And just a quick one on organic versus inorganic minerals. And this is what I tell my patients all the time, because they often will come and say, yeah, I take magnesium supplements, I take this supplement. And the reason I'm so strong on recommending longevity products is the quality of the production process, but also the type of mineral. And an organic mineral is acidic, negatively charged, and small particle or colloidal, and they're absorbed by our body properly. Something that's derived from rock or clay. So if it hasn't been through a plant and gone through those biological processes, it's basically going to be rock or clay, and it's alkaline, positively charged, and large particle. So it's the exact opposite of what we need, and your absorption rate plummets to 3 to 5%, sometimes 10%. And if you have an amino acid attached to it to assist it to be absorbed, maybe around 40%. The colloidal minerals or sea minerals, so the body balance is a good example of that, are around about 90 to 98% absorbable. So there really is no comparison. And the difference as well as that is the range of minerals that are in most products, and you just can't replicate it. It's very easy for me to send people down to the supermarket or to the health food store and say, buy this. The problem is they're just not getting what they need. So longevity is always my answer for that. And I haven't gone wrong so far. They've been really helpful for all of my patients, and they do notice the difference. So that's it. I think we got it in 20 minutes. So hopefully that was okay. And if you've got any questions, please let me know.
Okay, well, thank you. And I can you yeah, that's it. That was really awesome. Thank you, Craig. It just, my husband has issues with sleep, but then he works night shift. So
that's another issue.
Then I'm thinking, oh my goodness, like I'm pretty sure a lot of his health issues come from that bad sleep pattern that he has. And this is a week that he does night shift nearly every week. And
well, consistency of sleep is hard. When you're changing time frames all the time, that can be really difficult to get your rhythm back again. So fasting is one thing I didn't mention, but fasting can help reset body clocks. But if you're consistently doing night shift, that's quite challenging. But fasting can help reset your immune system as well as body clock. So usually about a 2 or 3 day fast is a good starting point. And so if you're having trouble getting your pattern back, a good fast can sometimes just help boost that process.
Oh, that's interesting. So at the moment, as you know, most of us in Australia are in daylight savings. And I find that throws people's body clocks out as well. And because, we've still got another month and a half of daylight savings. So fasting would be that a good idea to do?
It can. It's hard though. I'm having trouble getting my kids to sleep on time because it's still daylight at 8:30 at night and they're still winding down. So it is tricky. Fatigue is one of the better ways of trying to improve that wind down phase, because you're so tired, the light's not as big a factor. But it's also block out blinds and winding down with winding your brain down, something calming or quiet. Fasting is definitely one thing that can help, but I think it's more the hygiene we talk about, the sleep hygiene or the habits. And if you're very busy, and you're busy right up until bedtime, that's tricky. And the light is a factor. So it's worth a go. It's more resetting that I think it helps with the fasting. But if you can wind down with light, blocking out blinds and those sort of things, that's definitely helpful. But yeah, at this time,
Yeah, because I was
it's
thinking
really hard to get the
the resetting as we go from daylight savings off and vice versa. I'm thinking,
yeah,
could be it. That could be, because it's a challenge for so many people.
yeah.
It really throws the body clock out. So I'm going to open it to questions. Does anyone in the audience have a question? I know Grant will. He always has a question. Do you have a question, Grant?
Yes, I do. Dry needling, is that the same as acupuncture?
No, good question. So it's the same type of needle. They look exactly the same, but the process is different. So if I had a tight muscle in my thumb, I can just hold that muscle and relieve the tension. That's a trigger point, might be a tight band. A trigger point release is where we hold that. The dry needling technique is where we put the needle into that same spot. Instead of using my fingers, I can put a needle into it. So it might be your traps or your thigh muscle. So rubbing, stretching, massage, all those sort of things can help relieve tight bands. But a trigger point release with a needle is putting it directly into the muscle. Acupuncture goes into designated spots around the body, which
Meridians.
Which correlate to health and neurological pathways. I think they've all been mapped, and they tend to overlap with a lot of nervous system pathways. And so you're interfering with those nerve pathways. And when you combine those pathways, they tend to have a positive health effect. We're directly working on the muscle and the nerve supply. So it might be for the thumb, I'll needle somewhere in the lower neck. Because it's the same nerve that supplies my thumb, and we're trying to work on that same pathway. So dry needling looks the same, but it's quite different. And even dry needling can be slightly different from different practitioners. So some people just leave them in, might be there for 10, 15, 20 minutes. I tend to put the needles in and stimulate the muscle and take it straight out. So it's only in for sometimes a few seconds. Once we get what we call a twitch response, the muscle goes into an involuntary spasm, and then I take it out. And that's it. That's the technique. And so it's very different to acupuncture in terms of its application, but it's the same needle.
Oh, okay. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I've had them. I haven't even felt them really. Like they're just
No, not with acupuncture. Generally, you don't feel it at all. You would feel it if we do dry needling where we're stimulating it. You'll feel it. It's like a cramp.
Oh, okay.
It's mildly unpleasant, sometimes very unpleasant, depending on the person and how they're perceiving it. But quite often people come in, they know it's uncomfortable, but it's very short-lived, it's very temporary, but their results are so good. They're like, I don't care what you do, just fix the problem. 30 seconds of pain is worth getting rid of the long-term headache or back pain that I've got.
Thank you.
No problems.
Okay, thank you for that, Craig. And Laurie has a question before we go to Grace's in the comments.
Thank you so much, Dr. White. My church is starting a 10-day prayer fast tomorrow. And I intermittent fast every day, but I've only fasted for like 2 days before. And I also am recovering from 2 years of mold exposure.
Oh, yeah.
Is a 10-day fast safe?
10 days is safe. Yeah, I tend to keep nutrient levels up. You've got to keep your fluids up. But fast for as long as you can. There's a doctor called Dr. Jason Fung. He's an expert in fasting and diabetes, and he's got lots of videos online. He's got one that came out just recently, actually. His philosophy with fasting is do it for as long as you can, as often as you can. And any amount of fasting is helpful. The longer you fast, the more positive changes you can get. So you can have a real clean out of your gastrointestinal tract. You can improve your immune system. You can get rid of a lot of dead cells. You can help influence cancer. All those sort of health benefits come with longer fasts. So 10 days is a decent amount of time if you're not eating at all. If you're eating, say, once a day, you might do a 24-hour fast, 10 days in a row. That's still quite powerful. Once you get into the 36-hour, 24, 36, 48 hours, you get this steady increase in healing benefit with autophagy and growth hormone and testosterone levels, and your body goes through a strong healing phase with those longer fasts. But if you get to and usually by day 3, you've gone through the hard bit, and your body gets quite good at not needing food. One of the hard things is if you have a restricted calorie day where you only have 500 calories, you just want to eat all the time. You're sometimes better not eating at all. Just keep your fluids up. Make sure you're getting plenty of salt. So I have Hydrolyte, which is an electrolyte drink, and those sorts of things help hydration. So you don't want to go out without water. And I always take my minerals anyway. If I'm fasting, I'll always have my minerals to keep me going. Yeah, I've got them in my bottle. I have them here every day. So I'll combine those two things. But yeah, most of the time if I'm fasting, I'll still keep up my nutrients. But you can do it without it, but you've got to keep your fluids up. But you can have broths. So with a fast, you can have things like broths and herbal teas because there's no calories in them. The idea of the fast is to restrict insulin being released from your body. So if your body's not going through that digestive process involving insulin, it's actually fine. So clear fluids with no sugar in them that don't require digestion are generally fine to have during that phase anyway. So you can definitely have some things.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you for that, Laurie. And we'll go over to the wonderful, beautiful Gracie, who introduced me to you, Grace.
That's right. Hi, Gracie.
Hello, Craig. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
That was a great presentation. Thank you. Great info. Just on the back, just continuing on what you have just spoken about on what we can have when we fast. I often get the question, can we have all our nutrients? So you did say we can have our minerals. What about things like the BTT, cardio, beats, colon burst, OsteoFX? Is that okay to have on a 3-day fast, or do you just recommend just the plant-derived minerals in our water for the electrolytes?
Yeah, you can pretty much have whatever you like, really. It depends on the therapeutic path that person's on, and what's the priority. I would say that you probably can continue most of those things. You can check on most of the bottles should have, I've got some selenium here, they should have things on it like their, if there's any calories in them or sugars or anything like that. Anything with those, if you're really looking to fast really well, you might leave those out, but the amount of sugar in some of those things is so low, it might just be in the tablet, in the capsule. So those, there might be like a cellulose capsule or a gelatin capsule or something. So in those instances, you have the tiny amount, it's probably not worth getting too worried about. It won't break the fast so much that it's it'll have a negative effect. So I would say yes. Some of those things may have more carbohydrates in them than others, but if they don't, then I would continue them, particularly if they're on a treatment path, unless there's some interference. Some things like selenium can upset your stomach when you got no food. Yeah, I know Sean often mentions that he's very used to taking selenium, but he can't take it without food. And I'm a bit the same. You get a bit queasy. So some of those supplements, you've either got to sip or have in small doses, or just maybe not have one on empty stomach, because they just your stomach doesn't like it. No, you can do it, but it's not pleasant.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm guessing that black coffee is out of the question, a good organic black coffee.
No, you can have coffee. No, you can have coffee,
as long as it doesn't have the milk
black,
or creamer.
No sugar, no creaming, no milk, none of those things.
No collagen cream.
No.
Thank you.
Now, Gracie,
thanks, Craig.
Because in the comments you put here, and I've had this too.
Yes.
You put there about the doctors often tell you don't need calcium or you have too much of it. I get a lot of people saying, oh, the doctor says I've got too much, or oh, you don't need it. And
well, we definitely need calcium. When they talk about having too much of it, sometimes it's the amount of free calcium, and a calcium deficiency can sometimes give you more free calcium because your body is taking it from the bones. So the test, or one test for it, is osteoporosis, so a bone density test. You definitely haven't got enough calcium if you've got low bone density. So some of those metabolic or the nutrient testing isn't overly accurate because you're testing what's in the blood at the time. Some things are not stored that well in the blood. They can be a good reflection of what's going on, Your body generally will deal with what it receives in the way it needs to. If you're getting enough, I was just reading this morning. If you're getting enough vitamin K2 and enough vitamin D, D3, your body will deposit the and magnesium actually will deposit the calcium where it needs to go. Unless there's some other metabolic condition going on, just taking calcium won't cause your body to deposit calcium. You need enough K2 and enough vitamin D. And sometimes you're talking, 10,000 international units a day or more, 25,000 of vitamin D. But vitamin D toxicity can probably be overblown a bit. But I think, again, if you're deficient in K2 and magnesium, you get symptoms of what you might classify as D3 toxicity. One of the easiest ways is go and get some morning sun. 30 minutes of sunlight will give you 10,000 international units of vitamin D. Ideally, your eyes will get exposed as well. So morning sun is one of the best. Midday sun, especially in Australia, is probably not the best thing to hang out in for too long. You won't last very long. You'll get sunburn and all kinds of stuff. But morning sun is very good for you. So I think it's the cofactors, and that's just talking about if you're just taking calcium. One of the problems is a lot of people take, I would say most people who take calcium are taking something like Caltrate or Ostolin, which is calcium carbonate, which is limestone, and you're talking about a 3 to 5% absorption. Doc often talks about it causing gastric sludge. It just builds up in your gut. It doesn't absorb it. It blocks your digestive tract. And it's really not very compatible for our digestion. So it's really the kind of magnesium that and calcium that people are taking that is probably as much as an issue as anything else. But D3 and K2 are really important for making sure that the calcium goes where it's supposed to go, and your body will do what it needs to do with nutrition. It's very unusual to have a nutrient overload where you haven't got an imbalance. So too much zinc will cause a relative deficiency in copper. That's why the longevity stuff is formulated the way it is. It's balanced. And so then it becomes much more difficult to have any kind of overdose. And calcium, just because you're taking it, won't just go to the arteries, because you've got some other disease process going on if that's happening, which means you've probably got elevated cholesterol, you might have high blood pressure. They're all inflammatory conditions and all related to seed oils and imbalance in fats and systemic inflammation, gut problems. So your gut microbes are not where they should be. And they're issues you need to deal with probably first. And so I think in terms of calcium overdose, it's not as easy as it sounds. Just take a good calcium and you should be on the right track, I think.
Well, I mean, I've heard Doc say it, and I've heard a few others, like Dr. Glitton, that say it too, that gallstones and kidney stones and all that are calcium, too much calcium that's actually being drawn from your bone.
Your bones, yeah.
Which means, and their response is, you need more calcium of the correct kind, so milk and stuff, not.
You've got a metabolic imbalance in a lot of cases, or a disease process. You may have parasites, you might have other processes causing inflammation. Those are the kind of things that lead to what you're talking about as well. So there's never just one thing causes one thing, but your body's unhealthy. And that could be lack of nutrition or inflammation or lack of sleep, all contributing to a disease process. So the trick is to get healthy and stay healthy, and your body will correct itself. So I can't drive forward a process with nutrition. I can supply the body with what it needs, and it will hopefully do its thing, provided there's enough balances in those nutrients. A medication will drive forward a specific process. So if I tell someone to take salt, they go, oh, I've got high blood pressure. So well, usually your body will take the salt and regulate the blood pressure as it needs to. So quite often you can reduce blood pressure by taking salt. So my understanding is the people who tell you to not have salt when you've got high blood pressure are selling you a blood pressure medication.
I was just going to say,
it tends to be the drug company.
That's usually what they say.
They interfere with the results of studies to make it look like. So, for example, what they might do is they get a group of people with low blood pressure, give them salt, and their blood pressure will normalize and come up. And they'll say, our blood pressure is raised by salt. Don't have salt if you've got high blood pressure. But if you give someone who's got high blood pressure some salt, they might come back down and normalize. And so typically nutrients are a stabilizing effect, whereas medication will drive a particular process forward. And that's not to say it's bad. If you've got high blood pressure and it's acutely high and you need medication to lower it, then you do that. But then you should be then working on the underlying cause of the disease in the process, so you can then come off that medication again. And I've got a patient I saw yesterday with that exact problem. And he nearly fell off his chair when I said, you need to have more salt. He said, but I've got high blood pressure. I said, well, just have a little bit and check your blood pressure and see what happens. And that's all anyone can really do. If you're having something and you can monitor those biological markers, and blood pressure is one of them, see how you go. And I showed him a couple of examples of medical practitioners talking about that exact thing, that if you are if you have salt and you've got high blood pressure, be careful because your blood pressure might drop. So it's always a monitoring process. So
Yeah, exactly. That reminds me of a story that my mother and grandmother always told. My grandmother's father was about 96, and the doctor, this is going way back because, you know, both my mother and grandmother and great grandfather are all passed away long ago. And the doctor would go crook at my grandmother and said, stop giving him salt, stop cooking with salt. And she says, I don't, he adds it himself. And he said to the doctor, you know, so what's going to happen if I stop, taking salt? And he's, said, what quality of life am I going to have? How much longer will I live? And he says, oh, you might live a couple of more months, 3 or 4 months. So at 96, he said, well, I'm going to enjoy my food.
yeah.
I think he lived a lot longer than the 2 or 3 months the doctor thought.
Yeah, right. He had a good run at 96. Must have been doing something right.
And he was still just, I was born by then, by the way. So
Yeah.
I do remember him, and I always remember him being very lively.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's part of it. Being active and staying healthy is a good way to get there.
yeah, but I've noticed a difference myself. Sort of, of course, you sort of, you've got to cut out salt. But I've noticed since Doc Wally told me, you need more salt, I have noticed the difference in myself.
Well, one of the acute treatments I give for people who have a headache or a migraine is to have a hydrolyte. And sometimes within 20 minutes, they'll feel better. The headache either completely goes or it might reduce. And so they were dehydrated.
Yeah.
I could treat them and help them. But if they're at home and they just try a hydrolyte and it gets better, well, I can still look at them later because they'll probably have some underlying problems. But the salt was the issue. So for those people, it happens. It's quite common for that to happen. It doesn't happen every time. It's not like a painkiller. It just rebalances your body. So the only thing that can cure a nutrient deficiency is the nutrient. So you just got to put back what you're missing. Now I've got about 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, if we don't have any more questions, so Gracie's putting something in the comments. What are you saying, Gracie? Oh, she said thank you. Hang on. Are our minerals or rainforest? I can't quite see it.
Sorry, Bronie. It was does our liquid minerals and rainforest act like hydrolyte? So, or are you saying that we need other types of hydrolytes?
I'd have to check the amount. I'd probably say BTT would go close. I know one of who was it? It was one of Jeanette's distributors was talking about comparing pre-workouts and how he trained, and then did the same thing with BTT and compared which one was better. And he felt like he got better results with BTT. So I think because it's got so many nutrients in it, I'd say it's probably got enough salt. But it really just depends on the dosage. Sometimes you can take, a teaspoon of or a level teaspoon of crushed salt of the rock, the Himalayan salt or the Celtic sea salt in a day. You wouldn't take it straight away. You might vomit back up again. That's used as a vomiting aid. But yeah, I would say the BTTs probably would go close. And otherwise, yeah, it'd be just more of an electrolyte drink actually.
Okay.
All right.
Rebound.
Thank you.
Rebound.
Thank you.
Well, the one that I use
yes,
actually is
yes.
the electro fuel.
Oh,
I
sure.
use the electro fuel a lot with if I've had a headache, and 20 minutes quite often, and I'm feeling heaps better. So that's the one
I
I'm trying.
like my 5 little friends. These are our
Yep.
hydration sticks. I don't know if you've come across them at all, Craig.
Yep.
Especially the Choreo
Yep.
because it's great for inflammation and antioxidants and stuff.
Yep.
And I suffered with fibromyalgia for years, and the doctors just told me I just had to live with it. And then I came across these. I was introduced to these. Then our company that had these came into longevity, and adding then the 90, the Healthy Body Star Pack with the whole 90 made a world of difference.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fibromyalgia is typically a metabolic.
It just was like that icing on the cake. And I go, woohoo.
Yeah.
But I find
they
great
do work well.
because they're all these like have electrolytes in them.
Yeah.
But I find this is really good for migraines.
Yep.
And I believe, not being a drinker, I've been told that it's really good for hangovers.
Yeah, again, it just helps put the nutrients back that you've piled off overnight while you've had a few too many.
Yeah, well, I've not had that issue, so I haven't tested it. All right, well, Craig, I know you've got patients to see, and we appreciate you coming. We'll have to have you back again sometime.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Thank you so much for coming. So as I ask everyone here nicely in Bronie's world to stay safe, stay informed, to be empowered, but do not live in fear, my friends. And when you're giving your body what it needs, then you too will be powerful, beautiful, brilliant, and most definitely very brave. God bless you all. Catch you again tomorrow here in Bronie's world. And thank you very much for your time, Craig. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Bronie.
Thank you.